Hello guys, it's here we are starting our new work week, Monday evening here, and we're going to talk a little bit about vorticity and some upper level patterns now that things are getting active out west. Okay, let me get my charts set up here and we'll head right into this. Okay, here we go. I think we're set here. All right, here in Texas, though, man, it's been warm. I had to shut the air conditioner off to start this webcast. We were looking at low 70s where I'm at. We were up to about 80 degrees earlier today, and you can see we've got a pretty good fetch of winds out of the southeast across the state. And some of that deeper moisture is making it all the way into West Texas. So we've got 50s all the way to the Lubbock area and 40s in western New Mexico. So we're starting to get a little bit of maybe the dry line starting to come together once again out in that area. Let's go further west though. We were looking at California there on digital atmosphere. And you can see there's a lot of cloud activity from Utah down into the Mojave Desert. And you can see looking at the wind field, got a little bit of a cyclonic sense of rotation to the winds here. So certainly something is going on here. Check out the satellite picture. And one chart that I like to use is the water vapor this time of year. Now, water vapor imagery is sensitive to moisture in the upper and middle parts of the atmosphere. It's not very good for low-level moisture because the radiation signatures tend to be attenuated from those low levels. So what do we see here? We see a baroclinic leaf pattern. See this right here? And we've got like an S shape on the backside. This is a characteristic of a large shortwave moving through this area. And we would probably put that shortwave in right about that position right there. And to a certain extent, we can also match that up with frontal system signatures. Like a basic rule of thumb, your jet will be on the backside, either flowing around the pattern or flowing through the pattern, depending on what type of setup you have. And your actual frontal systems will be laid out something like that. Cold front down to the south and warm front out to the east. And that kind of makes sense because ahead of the shortwave you've got ridging, upper level ridging, and that overlies the area of warm air advection associated with the warm front. So that's kind of the things that would go through your mind looking at this water vapor imagery. What do we have on the charts though? Well, first let's take a look at the thickness field. Let me set this to the current time. There we go, 0Z. Okay, so we're looking for thickness gradients, which are basically equivalent to frontal zones. I can kind of quickly outline that area. So this is a frontal zone, area of thickness gradients. And we would tend to find the fronts on the south side of that, equatorward. So I'll just draw those on very quickly. Maybe a front through here, and another one through the east coast. And look at that, it falls right into that trough offshore right there. So that's certainly a front right through here. Out in the western U.S., it's a little less definite. But I think we can kind of pin it down maybe through here. And it becomes kind of washed out through that high offshore. So we're looking in this area of Nevada and Utah for a possible front. So do we find that in the surface data? Well, let's go and take a look. Yeah, sort of. Maybe a front through here, possibly. And we would also look at trends at each of the stations. And there's all kinds of data we can look at that and soundings. Now, another good tool you can use is Vorticity. Now, let me switch to the right chart here. Let's see here. I was looking at College DuPage right before we came on. They have one vorticity plot here for 500 millibars. But, yeah, as you can see, the patterns are very weakly defined. And what I'm looking at is the brown lines here. So sometimes your different charts from different sources are not really going to be ideal. So that I would probably not use. Same problem over at the NOAA model analysis page. I'm trying to figure out what I did with that link. I'll have to call that up. Let me do that very quickly. Just put in MAG and NOAA, and that'll take you to the official chart source from the National Centers for Environmental Prediction. I'll bring that up from the NAM, which is basically the WRF model. And we're going to pick the vorticity. Okay. So do we see any patterns in here? Well, it's a very busy chart, and I can see a little bit of a vorticity lobe through here, but not really any patterns drawn in here. So this is not a very good chart either. However, the Meteostar model system is actually pretty cool. Now you can see we do pick out some short waves in here. See that right there? That's the reason why, you know, I like to have a vorticity chart that has a lot of detail. It's missing from a lot of model sites, but Meteostar tends to get this right. So you can see right there, I can pick out that vorticity lobe. So that's that shortwave we were looking at on the satellite chart right there. But let me go back to that very quickly. I'm going to, just give me a second, I'm going to look over on chat just to make sure we don't have any audio. It's good, okay. So here's our shortwave associated with that system there in California. And out ahead of that shortwave, we have a shortwave ridge. So the ridge would be associated with warm air advection ahead of that. And the trough itself is associated with cold air advection in that part of the system. So you can see everything is kind of tied together. And another chart we can look at is the 700 millibar chart. This is up at 10,000 feet. So what do we see out on the west coast? Well, I'm looking at the red lines. These are isotherms. And I'm looking for gradients. So where do I find the tightest gradients? Looks to be kind of like in here. And out east, there's a similar area out there. So there's our 700 millibar thickness gradient out there. So this is showing me where the upper part of the frontal system is located. So you can basically stack this down to your surface charts and do the same thing. Normally, these frontal systems have slope. They slope towards the cold air with height. So if you have a surface system like right here, you would find your upper level fronts a little bit further west, like that. So you can use the upper level charts to kind of tie that in with your surface data. And you can get vertical consistency by working through the data that way. So anyway, let me put that front back on here. I guess it was probably in this area right here. I don't know, it's very weak. And if I run that to 6Z, I can kind of pick out maybe an upper level front right through here. So that's another thing you can, you know, work through as you go through the charts. And a lot of, with your deeper systems, you'll even have a 500 millibar front, particularly when you have very strong polar outbreaks coming from Canada. Those will stack up to a 500 millibar front just as well. Okay, well, hopefully I haven't confused you all too much. What else should we look at besides the California data? Check it out. Okay, so there's the California shortwave. That's going to have an impact on the forecast over the next week. Watch what happens to that shortwave. See, it's moving through Colorado there. And now you see it start developing as it clears this ridge. So usually as systems cross through ridges like that, they do tend to weaken and become hard to find. And as they emerge on the other side into the long wave trough, they will tend to strengthen. And that's what's happening here. So this is going to be Wednesday at 6Z. This is the 36-hour forecast. And then by 48 hours, you can see it strengthen even more. So now we have a frontal system coming together over the Chicago area on Thursday. And it continues deepening. And those of you out on the East Coast, that's going to be affecting you by Friday. So there it is. Major weather system developing there. Certainly not storm of the century major, but that will definitely impact your weather. You can see another system coming. And it's good to, when you're looking at these on the medium range charts, 120 hours out, I like to backtrack those and kind of figure out where they came from, because that'll clue you into areas you need to be looking at as you go through your chart analysis. Okay, so the big picture, got a long wave out on the west coast and one out east with a long wave ridge in the central U.S. And that pattern kind of hangs in place through the next week. Ridging over the central U.S. means warm weather here, fairly mild conditions. Then by the weekend, looks like kind of the same picture, continuing to be stormy out in California. And then you can see a couple of systems moving through the flow. And things become pretty zonal by next week. See that very straight flow. We don't have all the troughs and ridges that we do right now. And when things become zonal, you tend to have very fast progression of systems moving through. You can see 1, 2, 3 systems here. And we also see very strong development of lee-side cyclogenesis in Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado there. So we would probably see a pretty good fetch of southerly winds through Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. So it looks like this warm weather is going to continue here, unfortunately, and I'm really getting tired of running the air conditioner. But it looks like we get some relief maybe by November 5th. So, yeah, we're coming up on election day here pretty soon. It's hard to believe. So, a major trough coming through. This is probably going to be a good push of polar air. First week of November. And, wow, look at that. That really comes together. We are 300 hours out, so take this with a grain of salt. But if this was winter, we would probably consider this to be a polar vortex system right there. Big vortex there. Look at that coming together. Yeah, so where did this thing come from? Let's check it out. Let's backtrack that. That started out as this very mild-looking wave. Backtrack that out to the Pacific. And, yeah, that's way out there. You can see that system is coming all the way from Asia. So, it does make you wonder how well that system was sampled when it was way back over Asia. So there's a lot of speculation that goes into these long-range forecasts, and we're probably going to see that change quite a bit over the next week or two. What does that look like on the low-level charts? Let's check that out. Let's see, where's my charts? Yeah, here we go. This is the thickness and sea level pressure. Let's run that up to where we had that big major storm. I think we were about right there. 288 hours. Okay. So what do we have at the surface here? Well, we've got low pressure over Milwaukee. Frontal system looking like this, stretching all the way down to Texas. The warm front would extend eastward into New York. And above that, big vortex right on top of that. So looks like probably a pretty good push there of polar air coming in the backside through here. 540 line, though, is not very far south, so I guess maybe it's not excessively cold. But probably very deep, though. This is probably a very deep polar air mass. You can really see it right there. And there's the core of that right over Minnesota on November 6th. Yeah, 540 lines coming all the way down in Oklahoma. That, again, this is just speculation, but this does look like a very deep cold air mass. This is going to be interesting. We'll see if this actually pans out or not. I've probably said this in every weathercast. The GFS has a notorious cold bias when you get out towards 240, 300 hours. So we'll see what becomes of that. All right, so the general forecast. Let's see here. Did I cover everything? Yeah, I guess that was everything there. Okay, yeah, let's do our forecast very quickly. I'll bring that thickness chart back. There it is. Okay, starting out right now, front just off the east coast of the U.S., and there's our California system right there. Over the work week, let's see what happens here. Get a little bit of a warm front moving northward through the central plains, and we're going to see a bit of an overrunning type situation. Isentropic lift over Minnesota and the Dakotas, and maybe tomorrow night we'll cover a bit of that isentropic lift. System off the west coast of California. Looks like that's taken aim on Washington. So probably some wet weather coming up there. We get some cyclogenesis in Iowa. So new system coming together right there in that area of isentropic lift. Texas, meanwhile, stays under this southerly flow. And let's see here, by Thursday and Friday, here comes our next system heading eastward towards New York. And then off the west coast of the U.S., see here, kind of a complex pattern, but maybe something like that right there. Okay, then our weekend forecast. It's like a system coming up from the Rockies. Getting my pens mixed up here. Very mild push of Canadian polar air. Comes into Minnesota. Then by Sunday, let's see here. There it goes, coming through the eastern U.S. And things get active once again out west. And then for Halloween, Halloween's going to be on Monday. By the time you're out trick-or-treating, that's going to be the map right there. So low pressure right there over Minnesota. It's going to be wet, looks like, over the Great Lakes area. A little bit blustery up there, too. Looks pretty mild for Texas on Halloween. Much of the central U.S. also pretty fair. And looks like high pressure for the East Coast right there, so it should be very good weather for that. Then we get into November, and we start developing that big vortex system. This looks like a very good chunk of polar air over Quebec. So that's probably going to feed into that system. And then we see that take root on November 5th and 6th. So there it is, big, deep polar outbreak coming into the U.S. by then. Let's see what the ECMWF says. I guess the ECMWF doesn't go out that far. I don't know if we have any models that go out that... Yeah, the Canadian model goes out that far. Let's check that out. Now, when you run the Canadian model, this is a very good link for this. This meteocenter.com, center with the British spelling. The Canadians run a global model, the GDPS. They have a regional model called the RDPS and a mesoscale model called the HRDPS. So that far out, we're going to run the GDPS, which is kind of like the GFS here in the US. And they've got charts going all the way out to 240 hours. Oh, well, that sucks. But let's see what it's showing. Don't have a handle on that next system coming into the Great Lakes area. Looks like that's pretty far off. I don't think we have anything to look at, really. And I'll just check on the European model. I'm sure we don't have anything past 240 hours for that. Yep, 240 hours, that's all. I guess not much to look at there. And I'm just looking very quickly at the model offerings to see if we have anything that goes out that far. And I don't think we do. I guess all we have is just the GFS. Oh well. Anyway, that'll eventually come into range of all the different models, and we'll check that out and see if that comes together. So I guess I'm probably done here. Let me read through the chat here and see if I'm missing anything. That's very busy. Pivotal weather. Let me check that out. I don't think I've seen that. That in Google. Pivotal weather. So yeah, let me bring that browser window there. So pivotalweather.com. I'm going to click on their models links, and I'll just take a quick look at that. And yeah, these look pretty detailed. I like this. Let's check out the big vortex storm of November 5th and see what that looks like. Yeah, that looks like quite a busy storm there. 996 millibar low over Minnesota. And it looks like these colors correspond to wind strength, I think. Yeah, I'm looking at the scale right here. I think that's wind. So, yeah, basically if there's wraparound moisture on the backside, this is a good setup for blizzard conditions in the Dakotas. And let's see how their vorticity charts look. Go over to the left side, and click on upper air, and check out their 500 millibar. Oh, okay, they don't have vorticity. Okay, so this is going to be isobars and heights. Or, yeah, I'm sorry, isotax and heights. Temperature and wind, I'm going to check that very quickly. Now, there's a possibility this may be in their diagnostics section, so I'll just check that very quickly. I'll probably have to go through, yeah, here we go, dynamics, okay. Yeah, let's take a look at that very quickly. Yeah, this looks like a good site. I appreciate that. Estwick or Eastwick, I'm not sure which one. I appreciate that. I'll probably use this in an upcoming WeatherCast. Sources. Probably going to be a little bit too much for me to. I'll read through this once I go offline, and if there's any questions or anything like that, I'll address those in tomorrow's WeatherCast. Anyway, that's our presentation for tonight. I appreciate you watching, and check in tomorrow, and we'll do it again. Hopefully, we'll have some new stuff to look at. Thanks, and we'll see you tomorrow.